So I was just sitting here random at this coffee shop here in Walnut or Diamond Bar or wherever it is, and these two scrubs roll up on me and challenge me to a debate. So I'm like, fine, let's throw down. Anyway. Not really. I didn't just run into him here. I actually met him here on purpose. So Edmond's this is our very first scrimmage on this thing. I don't have any case. They have a case. I'm going to try to beat them anyway. That's why they have to go first. But I don't have anything. I'm running with just my mouth. All right. Edmond's going to be first speaker in this pair. We're not sure if this is going to be the national pair order or not. I'm probably going to keep these two together. I think at the moment I'm going back and forth. I have to finalize my decision soon, but I don't know what order they're going to speak in. Right now we're going to try it with Edmond first. All right, go ahead, Edmond.
Okay. So, Tyler?
And talk towards the camera and loudish so the camera can hear you, okay?
Time starts now. Hello, my name is Edmond, and this is my partner Brandon, and we stand in firm negation of this resolution. First frame definition: beneficial is helps democratic process. Criterion: whichever side best optimizes democratic processes should win this round. Reasons to judge using this definition and criterion. A criterion is supposed to be specific to one way that the round is supposed to be judged. This is why arguing any impact benefiting the U.S. won't work. Resolution is about the government either way. Contention 1. Constitution, Bill of Rights, 10th Amendment, tag. To vote affirmative is to vote for the government violating state sovereignty and individuals' rights. The power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Enumerated powers defined by Dutchman to A. Enumerated powers are powers given to the federal government by the terms of the U.S. Constitution. Look, Judge, the enumerated powers that the Constitution has granted the federal government does not include anything about elections. If you want to see the Constitution, I will gladly show you after the round. Because there's nothing about elections, the 10th Amendment states that these powers that aren't given to the federal government are given to individuals or the state. Therefore, if you vote AF, you will be violating the rights of American citizens and state sovereignty. Okay, now contention 2. Chapman to A. Tag. A half-national primary has resulted in tremendous failure in the democratic process. A national primary would be double that impact. Densely populated states with higher delegate counts would become the dominant focus of the campaigns and the media. Political parties would have little control over the selection of their eventual nominee, and state party leaders would no longer have the flexibility to set their primary or caucus dates according to state-specific considerations such as redistricting issues, state holidays, or other state and local elections. If you want evidence of why a national primary won't work, just take a look at 2008. At least 24 states held a primary on February 5th, resulting in what was essentially a de facto national primary. Super Tuesday became Tsunami Tuesday. The situation was so bad for overwhelmed campaigns, party leaders, and election officials that the two parties worked together to ensure the rules for 2012 would help avoid a repeat. Voters in small and mid-sized states would largely be ignored. Contention 3. Chapman B. Tag. A one-day national primary is weighted so that the wealthier candidates are more likely to be chosen than a less wealthy candidate. Not whoever is more beneficial. First, a national primary would give a huge advantage to better-known, better-funded candidates since only they would be able to finance the expensive advertising and large campaign operation needed to run a national get-out-the-vote effort in all states. Lesser-known candidates without extensive campaign operations would not have an opportunity to reach out to voters in retail-style fashion and build support. It would only make it harder and more expensive for all candidates to have a fair shot at competing. If anything, it would limit the number of viable candidates and severely reduce choices for the American electorate. Thank you, and I urge a strong vote for the negative side of this resolution.
Okay. Now it's the affirmative side. Oh, that's Linder. starts now. Hello, judges. I have 3 contentions and a framework today on my very exciting affirmative case. My framework is the same as my opponent's. I'm going to prioritize democratic processes and the best results for democracy over other kinds of impacts. My first contention is a single-day primary promotes the success of third-party candidates. Subpoint A. Only the Libertarian Party can actually improve democratic processes. Warrant 1. The Libertarian Party promotes the protection of individual rights to the exclusion of other concerns. Since all rights violations are an assault on individual liberty, only the Libertarian candidate can promote individual liberty. Since the underpinning of all democratic processes is individual liberty, then only the Libertarian candidate can promote democratic processes. All other outcomes that are non-Libertarian outcomes are counter to democratic processes because they favor rights violations. So all non-Libertarian options favor rights violations. Therefore, if we affirm this resolution, we have an increased chance of getting a Libertarian candidate, therefore having the best democratic outcome. My second contention is going to be maximizing equality. The problem with the current primary system is not everybody's vote counts the same. If you are voting late in the primary season, it's quite possible the election's already been decided for your party candidate, and in that instance, your vote functionally, for all intents and purposes, counts a lot less than does the vote of somebody who votes early in like New Hampshire or something, where they vote really early. So there's no reason why somebody in New Hampshire's vote or opinion should count more than mine here in California, but it does in the status quo. And if we want to maximize equality of voting, which is certainly an underpinning of the democratic process, then we need to have a single primary day so that everyone's vote actually counts the same. My third contention is the minimization of propaganda. In the current system, the candidates go through this very long process of trying to convince the most loyal party members to vote for them in these early caucuses and early primaries. However, the most loyal party members, most strongly party affiliated people, most loyal party members for all parties other than the Libertarian Party are going to be the most extreme. That is to say, the most rights violations occur when you elect people who represent the more extreme ends of the Democratic and Republican parties. Now, the solution to that, as I indicated, is to have a single-day primary that makes Libertarians win, since only Libertarians are the ones who favor justice and actually achieve democratic outcomes that protect rights rather than violate them. So, as a consequence, we don't want to afford the Democrats and Republicans even more time to spread their lies upon the populace, because their lies are oppressive lies. Their lies are lies of violence. They commit violence against the citizenry. And we don't want that propaganda to be spread widely, even more widely than it currently is. Okay, and that's my full affirmative case. And that's it for the affirmative side. Okay, let's have a crossfire.
Yeah, my computer there.
All right.
Okay. Time starts now. So what does your contention 3? Can you explain it? Yeah.
Yes, well, it basically says that there's a well-funded and organized effort to violate the rights of all American citizens, and it's called the Republican and Democratic parties. And so we need to minimize the amount of propaganda and lies they can disseminate, because what they're trying to do is convince everybody that it's okay to violate their rights.
Why do Republican and Democratic parties violate rights?
Because they justify the ends with the means. I mean, they justify the means with the ends. So if they think something's an important political outcome to do, then they're okay with violating individual rights by making legislation that doesn't adhere to any fundamental constraining principle.
And why go...
Let me ask a question of you, little mister. You said here that a half-national primary caused a lot of problems. So you're saying that it was logistically difficult for us to handle Super Tuesday? That we weren't prepared logistically to handle that? Is that your basic point there?
What do you mean by that?
Well, you said that Super Tuesday, the day that we had basically functionally a half-national primary day, it caused a lot of problems because the political parties weren't ready to handle it. Is that correct?
Our card basically says that, well, it's evidence of a national primary not working, and it gives us specific date.
Well, but why should we leave the primaries in the hands of the political parties at all? Shouldn't we just have a federal agency be in charge of it and run it in a uniform way? Why do the political parties need to be involved in this?
Well, if we have the federal government run it, then that's violating the rights of individuals.
Well, who has the individual right to run an election? That doesn't make any sense.
The states.
Oh, the states do. Well, you said it violated individual rights. Did you mean it violated states' rights?
Yes.
You did. Okay. So you want to don't make that mistake, okay? All right. Okay, so it violates states' rights, huh? Well, why? Where in the Constitution does it say that states have the right to run primaries whenever they feel like it?
Well, in the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, it actually says that the power that is not granted to the federal government in the Constitution, Section 8, Article 1, is given to the states.
Okay, so are you saying the Constitution doesn't forbid Congress from doing what it wants with the primaries?
Well, that's enumerated powers. It's going to be really hard.
No, yes, it does forbid it. It forbids it because it doesn't expressly allow it, and that's the rule for the federal government. Okay? So you say, yeah, it does forbid it. It forbids it because it doesn't expressly allow it, and that's the rule. Say that to me. Okay. All right, say that then. Practice saying that.
So, yes, the Constitution does forbid the federal government
From doing that.
From doing it, because it doesn't actually state that it can do that, which is the rule for the federal government.
Okay, good. Okay. So now it's Brandon's turn for a rebuttal. You want to take prep?
Yeah.
Okay, he's going to take some prep.
It won't. Time starts. So first I'm going to review my opponent's first contention where they stated that it promotes third parties. But the cost of that is we stated in our case that you're actually dropping out more candidates at the cost of trying to promote it. And I'd also like to state that he never showed on how an extended primary will actually promote libertarians to come, and at the libertarians, he never established a link that libertarians are different from the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Now, since I reviewed the first contention, I'm not going to review the third contention because their third contention is reliant on the first contention. And now because the first contention is down, I won't have to review the third. So moving on to the second contention where it says maximizing where they're trying to maximize equality. Well, at the cost of trying to maximize equality, actually create a lot more inequality that's a lot more impactful. As we have stated in our contention 1, that you're actually violating the Constitution, and you're violating the states' rights and the people's rights. So at the cost of that, you're also violating not only the people's rights but the states as well. And I also like to cross-apply my contention 3. No, I also like to cross-apply with a quote from one of my cards. It's a quote from one of my cards. And contention 3 states that it's actually unequal for the candidates because of how wealthy, because the wealthy actually benefits. The wealthy actually benefits on a one-day process. So it's actually unequal to not only the people but also the state and also to the candidates. So, and yeah, that's the end of the rebuttal.
Okay.
It would have been longer.
That's fine. You did well, Brandon. I mean, obviously, we're just getting started on the topic. The topic just came out yesterday, so we don't have much to work with, right? Okay. Time starts. Can you time me on this? Time starts now. Okay, first I'm going to go over my opponent's case. If time permits, I'll extend my own and answer some of their rebuttals. First, they talk about, in the first contention, they talk about this legality point. Well, the reality is the federal government is engaged in tons and tons of behaviors that aren't explicitly enumerated by the federal Constitution. We already know that to be the case. So if in fact illegality were such a bad thing, if in fact the federal government were going to cause any harms by doing yet another thing that's not amongst its enumerated powers, then why hasn't that already happened in the million other things that it's done that are not amongst its enumerated powers? There's no reason to prefer this strict literalist interpretation of the Constitution over a flexible interpretation that actually allows us to do things that are useful for the country rather than just adhering to this 200-year-old document that limits us to doing nothing. Without the federal government exploiting the flexibility of the Interstate Commerce Clause, then we wouldn't be able to have even any anti-drug laws, and we obviously need drug laws because otherwise everyone would do drugs all the time. Now, the other thing I'll say in response to this is my second answer is the Interstate Commerce Clause is the clause that permits Congress to engage in the rules that would allow it to have a single-day primary, because obviously a single-day primary is going to substantially affect interstate commerce. Now, the Supreme Court ruled back in 2001 or 2005, something like that, that a person named Angel something was unable to grow marijuana as a medical marijuana patient in her own backyard, even though she was going to consume it all herself and it would never be sold or given away. The Supreme Court ruled that that was, in fact, an example of interstate commerce, and the federal government did have authority over it, and therefore if that's interstate commerce, then so obviously is a one-day primary. So therefore it is legal. That eviscerates the first half of my opponent's case right there. Now let's look at number two. They say a half-national primary, Super Tuesday was a big mess. Well, yeah, Super Tuesday was a big mess. It's because it was run by the political parties. All of their impacts, the parties will have little control, and the state party caucuses will be dictated from the central authority figure. Those are all good things. We don't want political parties in charge of this. We want the best candidate, not political party bosses, to make these decisions. Political party bosses are just regular people like you and me who think they know better than everybody else. But they don't know better, and we need to minimize the effect of those party bosses. Minimizing the effect of the party bosses is one way that we're going to maximize equality, and we're also going to produce general positive outcomes for democracy that we otherwise wouldn't be able to cause. Now, the third contention, Chapman B, talks about how a single-day primary would favor the more wealthy candidate, but it simply makes no intuitive sense because a longer primary season requires a more extended advertising season. It means paying for more advertising. It means paying for more campaign workers. It means hugely extended, long, overdrawn campaigns that destroy millions of dollars of wealth for no good reason. As a matter of fact, a single-day primary, especially if we were to limit the window of acceptable campaign advertising, which is certainly an acceptable option, limiting that window of effective campaign of allowable campaign advertising would level the playing field more than anything else in terms of wealth disparities for political parties or for political candidates. We need to stop worrying about the parties so much, except for the Libertarian Party. Now I'm going to go ahead and answer some of their rebuttals if I have time here. They said that they proved that more candidates would be promoted by a shorter primary season. Oh, I got it backwards in one of my rebuttals, huh? Yeah, I should say. An extended primary season, I screwed up on one of my rebuttals. I argued your side on one of my rebuttals.